Hey gang, so this is going to be a tutorial of a different color. Namely, we're not going to be talking so much about an individual trick in this tutorial, so much as how you practice the tricks in general, and really how you practice it all. I've had a few people ask me about practice habits over the years, and it's something that I actually read quite a lot about, so I wanted to do a video for you guys to kind of distill down some of the things that I've learned over the years in terms of best practices, as well as some of the research that I have read about how we pick up new motor skills and the like. First, let's talk a little bit about goals. In theory, when we practice, it's because there's a goal that we're trying to achieve. I'm a big fan both of setting long-term as well as short-term goals, coming up with an overarching idea of where you want your spending to get to, and using that to inform the things that you do day to day, week to week, or even month to month. Long-term goals can be very specific. Say you want to get on America's Got Talent. Or they could be more general. Say you want to learn all of the new tech tricks that came out in the last 6 months. Or you want to develop transitions between said tech tricks. You want to integrate more dance into your style, or even that you want to improve your flow. Any one of these is an acceptable goal, but any goal that you set should also come with a series of steps that you go through in order to get to said goal. For example, right now my long-term goal is to improve my four-poi spinning. So, as part of that goal, what I do on a day-to-day basis is I work on trying to get down all of the two-poi tricks with my left hand that I can already do with my right hand. So in theory, one day I can coordinate the two things together. That helps me direct my practice on the day-to-day and month-to-month level, as well as help me realize when I'm getting closer and closer to reaching that goal. Before you start each individual practice session, I like to set at least 3 goals that I'm going to try and accomplish in the course of that session. Usually, I think about what the long-term goals as well as my goals for that week are, and I try and think what I can do on that particular day to get closer to that week's goals and the long-term goals as well. It's really helpful to keep in mind as you're working on a day-to-day basis that a lot of what you do is very physically difficult. For example, as I'm working on four-poi, I'm building up a lot of calluses on my hands. So what I'm actually liking doing is alternating days, doing four-poi on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and working on two-poi or double staff on Tuesday, Thursday. This means that my hands get a day of rest to heal up in between every four-poi session. The same may be true if you're working very heavily on dance, which is very taxing on your body. Make sure that you're both working hard enough in order to achieve your goals, as well as giving your body and brain enough space to rest that you're not compromising your ability to reach those goals either. Next, you're going to want to develop a regular warm-up ritual and stick to it religiously. Now, this could be anything from a series of stretches to doing yoga or tai chi. You also might want to think about some environmental cues, like, say, putting on your favorite mix, or even burning a stick of incense if you happen to have a scent that you're really fond of. The point of this is that it becomes essentially programming your brain and developing a classical conditioning regimen. If your brain comes to associate those cues with the work that you're doing afterwards, then if you enter into a stressful situation, like say a performance, or you come into your practice on a day when, you're not in the greatest of moods or you have an injury, it helps your brain get into work mode that much faster. Again, it's important that this is something that you do religiously every time that you practice, so that your brain gets to associate those cues with the work that you do. Here are a few tips for practicing tricks if that happens to be your goal. The first and biggest one is break the trick down into the smallest possible component that you have a difficult time doing. Then, work to get 10 reps of that particular component before moving on to the next one. In this way, you can build up a trick piecemeal and have enough reps of all the different component pieces under your belt that when you go to work on the final trick, it's that much more stable and easy for you. Now, granted, this means that it'll usually take a while to get a particular trick done, but your overall stability once you get it down will be more than worth it. Practicing dance or flow is a lot trickier because it's so very subjective depending upon who's watching and who happens to be performing it. Nonetheless, here are a few very general tips that I have found have helped me out with my own dance practice. Number 1, put on your favorite piece of music and see if you can spin with your feet doing the leading instead of your poi. That is, dance with your feet and see where they take your poi with you. See how this changes your style and see what it changes about the way you spin and whether you can incorporate that into something further. Another possibility would be to take a piece of choreography that you've seen on the internet and learn how to do it yourself. This is not very prevalent in the flow arts, but it should be. This is the way that dancers learn. So, don't be afraid to learn how somebody else spins, and you may discover something very interesting that you can use in your own style in the process. Finally, you could take a piece of footwork that you've, say, learned in another dance class, or just happens to make your feet happy, and see which poi tricks you can stack on top of it. See how many different types of sequences of poi tricks that you can stack on top of it. The sky's the limit. Whenever possible, practice with mirrors. The immediate visual feedback is absolutely invaluable and will show you what you need to work on. Also, whenever possible, record your practices on video. Being able to look back on the work that you've done over the course of several months is a great motivational tool to show you where you've come, as well as what you still need to work on. Here are a couple general notes on practice based upon some of the literature that I've read in the past few years. The first, and probably the most surprising to me, was that the brain actually tops out on its productivity with deliberate practice after only 4 hours a day. Now, this is not to say that you won't still accrue benefit if you practice, say, 6, 7, or even 8 hours a day, but that the returns that you get based upon that practice diminish rapidly after the 4-hour mark. As it turns out, the brain's mechanisms for learning just get burnt out after that amount of time. Next, it turns out that the brain does quite a lot of learning while you're asleep, which is really surprising given that it's not actively engaged in anything. As it turns out, you build lots of connections over the course of your day, and when you're sleeping, your brain actually goes through and it clears out any extraneous connections, so that things that you do repeatedly over the series of a great number of days are more likely to be things that you remember because they resist this kind of spring cleaning that your brain does every night. As such, if you can practice within 4 hours of going to bed, as it turns out, what you practice then winds up being that much easier to remember the next day. This is because those connections are the strongest ones that you keep before you go to sleep. So, if you can, practice 4 hours or less before you go to sleep every night. Finally, if you can, find a good teacher or a coach. Now, this does not mean that you need to find somebody who knows exactly how to do all the spinning arts. This could be a close friend who just watches you, or perhaps somebody who is an expert in another one of the spinning arts. Any which way you look at it, it's helpful to have another set of eyes on whatever you're doing, and to be able to call you out on some things that you may not see yourself. The value of a teacher is extraordinarily high when it comes to mastering a particular skill. So these are some pretty generalized practice tips. It's not as specific as, say, how do I master 3-point juggling inside of a month? You're going to have to come up with the answers to that one yourself. But hopefully what it does do is it enables those of you who are at the beginning of your flow journey to be able to get the most out of your practice and be able to direct your practice in the way that best suits your particular style of spinning. Thanks so much for watching, and I will be back with more poi for you next week. Peace. This video right here was made thanks to the kind contributions of these folks right here. They found me at patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signed up to make a contribution every month. By doing so, they got access to a whole bunch of extra footage from the videos that I put out every month, plus which, a number of really awesome rewards. If you or anybody that you know has learned something from one of the videos that I've put out, please consider going to patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi and signing up to be a supporter. Thank you.